And we're live. Welcome to the Liquid Swan channel. Today I'm interviewing Sol Invictis. How you doing, Sol?
Hello, hello.
So let's get right into the questions. How about you, without doxing yourself, of course, tell us a little bit about yourself, early life check, so to speak.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I'm in my late 30s, 40 this year. Work in the tech industry here in Norway, like a smaller tech firm. We
Hmm.
do like software and web development and stuff like that. Also have a background in game development. Uh, I've been, well, it's kind of a disenfranchised youth. I was kind of a late bloomer, so roaming around, not doing much constructive until I became a programmer, maybe 12 years ago or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And been working with that ever since. Now I'm mostly into management, team management, and project management and stuff like that. Also do a little bit of consultancy on startups and different difficult tech questions, everything from machine learning to platform development, infrastructure as a service, and stuff like that.
Hmm. Well, that's actually pretty high up there then, in
Yeah,
terms of
it's
skill.
it is it is easy to get up there if you have the kind of the technical know-how. There's a lot of developers, but there's few who specialize in the more low-level stuff now. These days, everyone's just very unspecialized web developers usually. So,
Hmm.
but we have this. We do outsourcing, and we actually have a company in Vietnam that we manage with like 15 employees or something. So. Yeah, it's quite common actually to do that here in Norway because of the high wages. So
Yeah, makes
yeah, so
sense.
that's how I spend my day, wrangling foreigners, creating technology.
That's pretty cool. And your family life, like when you were growing up, did you have any siblings? And tell us more about
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I do. I come from a family, except my father, I would be a fourth generation National Socialist.
Hmm.
So it's like old conservative family from Norway.
Yeah.
Uh, I had two sisters growing up. Mother and father, they divorced when I was 35 or something, so it didn't really affect me. But I guess that's how it goes usually these
Yeah.
days. But
So,
family life was normal in a small Norwegian, southwestern Norwegian town, maybe 15,000 inhabitants, rural area. Very chill, very nice. Yeah,
so
kind
I
of
guess
normal upbringing.
so you're saying your like say your great grandfather was involved or something?
Yeah, my grandfather was in the SS as a volunteer during the war. He was on the Eastern Front and fought there. My great
Hmm.
grandfather was one of the founding members of. He founded a local branch of National Samling, as it's called. It's the Norwegian National Socialist Party, basically.
Hmm. What was
So they were.
the? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
They were just saying they had to do time for that and some stuff like that. So it was just that.
Oh, to jail and stuff, or after the war?
Yeah. They took, but there's 7 years of hard labor, as they call it.
Like,
You know, in Norway, it's always been a tradition with very lenient punishment. So I guess that the real punishment was that they took down our family financially and stuff like that.
so you're saying your grandfather fought and then he had to go to jail because of that? That's
Yeah,
that's terrible.
yeah, it is. It's quite. It's not fair to put it like that, but it's what it is. My great grandfather also had to go for 7 years, so they went together. Actually, had to work on a farm for 7 years. My father had to stay home with his brother and sister and the mother. They also
Mm,
had like the town kind of. My grandfather, great grandfather, was the mayor of the town during the war and before the war, and
mm.
he was like he was well liked, and people kind of took care of them, even still. So I guess it went as well as it could go.
Yeah, the politics game in some sense, right? Like versus the local.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Because even
They
you
would
know
shoot.
even if you were
Mhm.
like even if you were on the other side of the argument, right? Like it does to me, it doesn't make sense to like jail someone for what essentially was just like part of the times, essentially, right? Like you didn't
Yeah, exactly. So
no one knew who was gonna win.
that's true. It's I guess like what they say here is the the divide between National Socialists and Communists in that era was very much a class divide
Mm,
because you would have the upper classes, they would, or upper middle to upper classes, they would flock to fascism and National Socialism, and you had the lower classes, they would flock to communism and social democracy. But most of the people who were kind of engaged in the conflicts and when many went to as volunteers to Finland during the Winter War and
mm-hmm,
still ended up on the Social Democrat side
mm,
in the Second World War. And these people would, like prior to the Second World War, these people would be friends, you know. So they would actually be among the first who reconciled
mm.
and came together again. And you would have all these idiots who kind of who did nothing during the war. They would be the ones who came out vocal, shaving women's head for being with German soldiers and shit like that, you know.
Yeah, it makes
So
sense. Yeah,
so you had that like the workers. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead. I was gonna add something, but you go ahead.
The Labour Party kind of took over in my grandfather and great grandfather's town after the war, and they still do. So, but still, like the veterans on the other side, they would actually take care of the family. They would protect them against all this shit. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess it went as good as it could in a way.
Yeah, there's honor usually between soldiers, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah, that's really the only thing that keeps war civilized. You know, uh, as
Yeah.
as bad as it can be.
Yeah, it was my father's riding coach. He was the man who sat guard for Quisling on his last night and drove him to the execution. Actually, so
Oh wow.
it's very bad you had this divide created among former friends, but they actually came together after the war, and it's kind of a white pill in a way.
What was the justification for like executing Quisling?
It was treason,
Treason. Okay.
but yeah, so that we actually had that was the only thing you could get the death penalty in Norway for up until I remember it was actually still in law when I was a kid, but now I think they've taken it away.
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, that was the thing. I think that was like I think it's something we didn't do in Norway. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I think it was not something that was very common prior to the war either. But they kind of woke up the paragraph to apply it to what they viewed as the worst offenders, like Quisling, who
Yeah.
was really a great guy. He was a friend of my great grandfather. I have lots of photos of them together, and he saved. Many people don't know this, but he saved hundreds of thousands of people in Ukraine from the communists with Nansen. they made these. They call them the Nansen passports. They went down and gave passports to peasants who and other people who had to flee the communists.
Mm-hmm. Man,
So he's another person who's suffered grave injustice to his heritage and his name.
what's your
I would say.
and how do you call them? Like, what happened to the regular government before they were taken over? Did they just abandon the country?
Yeah, they went to England.
So
They're lauded like heroes for that, for fleeing the country and sitting in England and do radio broadcasts or whatever, along with the king.
so they accuse this guy of treason, and then they're running away. Shouldn't they
Yeah,
be accused of cowardice or something?
yeah. That, in a fair world, that's what would happen. But obviously, it didn't. Yeah.
How long?
It's a very sad story. Like the whole country is just completely borked by these Labour Party stooges now, and they're like we always had the tradition to be very anti-Jew, anti-Israel in Norway. Even when
Mm,
I grew up, all the mainstream media here would just keep barraging Israel all the time. But now it's just they're just not propagandists basically. Just it's very sad. Like we used to ban Jews by constitution. We're actually number 110 is Norway actually. We I don't know why we're not on the lists, but we banned Jews and Jesuits in the constitution.
that's crazy to think
The
about now,
original,
right? Like think about like this world that we live in, and that happened.
yeah, yeah. It used to be common sense, back in the days.
Yeah, now you can just now they just own all the you know. Anyways, uh, so how was life growing up in Norway for you? Was it like I mean, back when I was a kid, nothing was like it is now. So I'm assuming it
Mm.
was somewhat similar over there. But what was it like going through school and um, was the community pretty
Well,
close?
yeah, it was like I remember we had this communist teacher. So that was kind of part of the whole waking up thing, like it's kind of a nagging thing in the back of your head all through your upbringing. Like all this is a bit absurd.
Hmm.
But like school was normal, like very very homogeneous. No, like I still remember the first time or the first black person moving to my small town,
Hmm.
and like it was, and I guess it until very recently it was still like that. But now the last thing I heard now is that you had Africans with machetes fighting. A friend of mine got stabbed actually,
Oh
and
wow,
stuff like that. So
that's just
yeah,
awful.
so
Like, well, was
yeah,
this
it
the Labor
is.
government?
Yeah, well, it doesn't really matter. I've actually been active when I was younger, and normally I was actually active in the Conservative Party up until like the early 2000s, both in the youth party and actual party, and
Hmm.
they are hardcore globalists, even worse than the Labour Party in some ways because they're pro EU and all this shit,
Hmm.
and also they had this. I discussed it on Twitter this other day, actually, with the current youth leader of the party, who everyone celebrates as a bit based, but really not. Like they had this takeover by homosexuals in the early 2000s, like the gay lobby, basically, and all the OGs they just fled the party, and yeah. So
Yeah.
in many ways, the conservatives are even worse.
Did they did the people that left, did they end up forming something else, or did they just abandon?
They just abandoned. It's a
Mm.
lot of the upper class people from like it's where I live. It's like the oil industry is huge here.
Mm.
So you have a lot of people with a lot of money. So I guess they just said fuck no and left,
Oh yeah, that's right.
and you
You
have no alternative.
so does is your is the tax rate pretty high in Norway?
Yeah, it is, but it's in a way like it is very high. It's you hit top tax very easily, like 48%.
Well,
But if you kind of compare it to the states, for example, it's comparable to lower actually because of course we get the healthcare and all that included.
yeah, that's true.
So it's not the best healthcare. It's like Canada, I reckon. Only our healthcare system doesn't euthanize homeless people and stuff like that yet.
Well, they only
But
euthanize homeless people that aren't on drugs.
yeah, fucking hell, man. It's so dark. It's you can't do much more than that.
It's yeah, it's oh yeah, I've talked about it a little bit, and it's just like it's dark. It's so dark you almost can't do anything but laugh. You know?
Yeah, you're just waiting to wake up.
Yeah. Oh, it's just
From
man. Well, like my mom used to work in a old folks home, and
yeah,
I don't think she was involved in that side of things. I think it just it kind of made her go. It would make her go crazy, so she didn't. But like it was happening, and there's nothing that like she could do about it. But
yeah,
but that stuff would happen anyways. Like like it's an old person and they're in massive pain, so they just keep upping the it's called end of life care, right? They get kind of up the morphine until
yeah,
they
yeah,
just fall asleep and they peacefully pass. But usually that'll be something like they have some serious condition, like they're just dying anyways. But the
yeah,
the thing with like the teenagers and stuff like that's just so twisted, dark. It's hard to even fathom. You know, if you
yeah,
think about this, I coach my kids so that they don't say the wrong thing and then um, get led down the garden path. Let's say
yeah.
it's that dark.
Yeah, I used. Oh, sorry. I used to work with kids actually here in Norway. Like after I dropped out of my architecture studies and before I became a programmer, I worked in kindergartens for a year. No,
Hmm.
for a few years. And one of the criterias we had when we were evaluating the kids, and this is like I'm unsure if it's a government like from like a national thing or if it was just a municipality thing. But one of the criteria was to look for dissenting political views in kindergarten kids. Can you
What?
imagine? Yeah, yeah. It's so they can. I reckon it's so they can use that as an entry for child protective services to go in and fuck with the parents.
Or try to or make a just making a note of that is really dark because they might try to like correct it, you know, and these people don't know
Yeah.
what they're correcting at all.
Luckily, my like the places I worked, they were vehemently against it, so they would just laugh at it and not like we don't care about that point, like just
Yeah,
skip it,
those are
like
like
any sane person would do.
the breathing holes that that keep the country functioning in some sense, right? You imagine like they take all the youth that were identified as kindergarten descendant or dissidents, and then like
Yeah,
mess with them as they get older. Oh, you can't get this. You don't get selected to go to university because when you're a kid you said you know a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl or something like that, or
yeah, exactly.
or you love Jesus or whatever.
Yeah, I remember when we went to elementary school, me and a friend, like we used to sit and we drew like we had these papers, big paper A3 papers that we used to make like we drew war basically. That was kind of our thing, drawing
Hmm.
tanks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
and always both of us always picked the German side, you know. And I remember we played Germans and Jews in the in the in the free time, and we broke this guy's arm because he didn't present this pay. So you can imagine what would happen today if we did that, you know.
He didn't present his papers.
Ja, deinen Papieren. He tried to run, and we did the whole police thing with the arm on the back, and it snapped.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah,
So
nowadays it'd be like, well, yeah, you know.
that would not fly today, I think. But this was the early 90s, a different era.
So it's like you George Floyded him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. When I was a kid, we used to play like war and stuff as well. You know, you'd have like toy guns and stuff. And there's an old what do you call it? Defensive fortress from the 1800s here, and it's kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's like a park you can walk around. There's like tunnels and um, old concrete like gun emplacements and stuff, and like a tower, and
yeah,
then and you'd run around. And eventually, when laser tag came out, man, that was crazy because we had these like really crappy laser tag sets. And you could like shoot at each other from a distance, and that made it pretty cool. But nowadays, I'd be worried about sending my kid to do that because they'd probably report it as like they'd probably report it. You know, back then you were just like
mm,
a kid, and we would you know that you buy those like cap guns that have like you know you pull
mm,
the trigger and it makes a bang. Well, they
mm.
we would take the orange thing off, the orange tip, because we thought it looked stupid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
We wanted to look real, but now if you did that, you'd probably end up getting shot or something, or you just
yeah,
get shut down eventually because you got these. Because when I was a kid, like no one, they were just like kids playing, right? So they didn't care. But nowadays they'd be like, "Oh, they're playing with guns. Maybe they're real. We better report it just in case."
yeah,
It's like living in 1984
yeah.
sometimes here. Well, like during
I,
COVID,
yeah,
they shut down they quote shut down. I'm putting this in quotes because they didn't really all the playgrounds by putting like this yellow tape on them, and
mm,
it's crazy. People were so compliant. You know, like the only thing you could do was like take your kid to the park. So I'd like walk down there and just I wouldn't take that if I took down the what do you call it, the rope or whatever, the tape.
mm.
I could technically be arrested. So I made sure not to do that because there were people watching me doing it. And then I would say, yeah, go ahead, kids, play on the park. And I play with them and stuff. And but there were people giving me dirty stares and you know they're just like so compliant and cowardly.
Come
Yeah, and
yeah.
like
It-
cowardly. It was kind of sad. Lost a little bit of faith in my fellow Canadians at that time.
Something people have to realize is that like it's both a positive and a negative. It's like many people they sit and wait for everyone to agree with us, but that's really not what will happen. You know, like most people they just sit and wait for the next programming. You know, in a way.
Yeah,
It's like if you stand in the city and you stand by a crossing on the road with lights. There's a red light to cross, but no cars. Everyone's just standing there until this one guy walks over, you know.
yeah. The leader.
And yeah, it's the same with everything. Like once you don't need to amass a majority, really. You just need the right people to agree with us, and then the rest will follow. Like I've seen it. I had this episode on the bus on the way to work. Like one of these. Not a double decker, but we have these buses that are two buses jointed together,
Hmm.
long ones, a full bus. And this junkie, he comes in and he attacks the bus driver, starts hitting him while we're driving on the highway because he wants him to stop. And not, everyone's just sitting there staring down on the floor. And I end up in a fight with this guy. And then people come and start helping me. But that's how it is. Like a full bus, there's probably, I don't know how many is in there, maybe 100 people. And none of them do anything. They just sit and wait for someone to do something, you know.
Yeah,
And that is kind of,
that's typical, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of it. It tells you something about like most people are kind of useless, but also it tells you that victory isn't that far away, maybe as people might think. You know, like you have in the States now, it's like 1/5 of the young generation doesn't believe in the Holocaust.
Yeah,
That's
and
20%.
yeah, some of them like you ask them, they don't even know what it is. I bet you even more don't even know what it is.
That's a good point. That's a what? The whole what?
Yeah, what did the
Yeah, I've actually
Holocaust?
experienced that. Tell a Holocaust joke at work, and this one girl was like, "What? What's the Holocaust? Ever heard of that? It sounds made up," as Norm Macdonald would say.
It sounds like commie gobbledygook. Um,
Yeah,
no, of course, on the Liquid Swan channel, just as disclosure, I believe everything the government says about the Holocaust and the events of World War II. Thank you. Anyways, um, gotta keep my channel up alive.
yeah, it's just this crazy guest of yours.
No, no, he of course believes exactly what I say too. Anyways, wink, wink. So, are there any just moving forward? Any are there any project? Or sorry, how did you get into this sphere? Anyways, originally, what was your some shows they say like the red pilling moment, but I'm more thinking like what your pathway. Well, I guess you're kind of
I've Oh, sorry. It's a bit of
no.
a lag, I think, so I don't really finish every time. But I didn't mean to. But like, it's both a gradual thing. Like it's been happening for a long time. The whole JQ thing was a hard pill to swallow because, like, my analysis is that it sounds very implausible because it implies like cartoonish evil almost in a way, which you kind of can't if you just analyze it like it's human beings being human beings on a different side of the world. It's or in a different strata of society. It is very. It doesn't make any sense until you see it in a way. So I've been kind of very conservative and red pill, but the whole identitarian thing that took a while. So that's maybe like in 2016 around those times, or no, a bit later, because I remember then it was all the MAGA stuff and the meme wars and all that shit. But
Hmm.
then you saw kind of how Donald Trump descended into the whole MAGA mindset, make Israel great again,
Yeah,
and then you kind of got disillusioned, and the cognitive dissonance just took over, and yeah, and on with the skull mask, and you know.
yeah. Well, it is interesting. Like, think, do you ever listen to Scott Adams?
Yeah, I do.
He uh he has this interesting way of looking at it from my perspective, which is that what you're witnessing, what we're witnessing with Trump, like the real big thing with it is that he's very persuasive, and
Yeah,
he's like what he calls him an energy monster. So
yeah,
which is interesting because if you listen to if you're listening to the left at the time, they're like, oh, there's no way Trump could win, blah blah blah, and you don't have to be perfect. No one. I mean, I don't think Trump's perfect, obviously, but and obviously I don't believe in the. I don't think democracy is going to be workable too much longer. Wink, wink.
no,
But it was interesting to see this happen, and then to me the most interesting part was like how insane everybody went on the left. Like I still come across the deranged people, and like
mm,
and they look at him like it's so weird because they look at him like Mustache Man 2.0, or maybe that's just bullshit too. But then obviously he's like Miga, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah. It's rampant here in Norway. It's very like you have a very conservative people will still be anti-Trump. I guess that's like Norway has never been like we are close to the US, but culturally not so much. Like uh, people here tend to shy away from American TV, for example. It's
Hmm.
less and less these days, but we've always been on our state channel. They like the comparable to the BBC. They would
Hmm.
send British shows, not American. So we tend to be closer to that humor. I think like Trump is very American, you
Yeah, yeah.
know, and so it kind of rubs people here the wrong way.
Hmm.
But
Well,
yes, I remember I didn't like him in the beginning because I thought he was a clown and all that shit. But then I saw all the stuff that was kind of the big cognitive dissonance driver for me was all the accusations against him, and it was so obviously untrue, and all the people who went into it, they were like, you could see that it was just confirmation bias all the way, you know.
yeah. Yeah, man. Like I remember how crazy people went, and it's like it never ended on
Yeah,
on that end of things. I was able to
yeah,
like my mom. She's very like she likes to be really neutral on a lot of things. So so that's it's really easy to get her to understand what you're trying to say, you know. Um,
mm,
but like my dad, like you can't tell him anything, essentially.
yeah.
But
It's like
even my mom was really well, was really balanced politically in terms of her like how she thinks. Like she's able to hold two ideas in her head at the same time and all this other stuff. She eventually came around to being like, oh, I get it. He's kind of like a clown, and everyone thinks he's Hitler, you know.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, and people legit believe that here. Like people legit think he's Hitler here, and it's like I remember I was at a Christmas party and I had to. It was my wife's work Christmas party, so I had to maintain my power level or hide my power
Yeah.
level. But like I can't remember this. I didn't want to get into political discussion, obviously, because like this is my wife's career. And someone said to me, "Yeah, who would have thought George Bush the second was one of the good ones?" And I was like, "What the?" And then I was like, "It's the amount of because when I was a kid, right, George Bush was Hitler essentially, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah,
he was murdering Iraqis and all this other stuff. And, I mean, and all that's true. It is true. It wasn't Hitler. That's just stupid. But like the it's weird how everything always has to reference that era. Every single thing. It's
yeah.
like time stopped. You know. Oh, this is. It's no difference in saying like it's the devil. You know. Oh, it's the devil. Have you ever seen that movie, Waterboy?
Yeah, a long time ago, so I don't really remember it, but I know it's the Adam Sandler movie, isn't it?
Yeah, and his mom's they're Cajun, and is like from Louisiana or whatever, and his mom's like calls everything the devil, like football's the devil.
Yeah,
It's just that's basically what we are in Canada. Like
yeah.
when it comes to anything that's not like communist or um, there's people here that even call like our milquetoast conservative party. They call them essentially the devil. You know, they give them the monikers and um,
Yeah. And I've actually watched because I watch a lot of YouTube. I'm very interested in politics, and I've seen these videos from your parliament, and you see like obviously you have Poilievre and all that. He's probably, I imagine, one of the Zionists as well.
oh yeah, no for sure.
One of these.
He wears the hat and goes to the
But
wall.
you see, yeah, yeah, exactly. But you see these characters on the other side, like Trudeau, obviously. But you have this woman, I can't remember her name. Like they're so obviously not good people. I
Oh,
don't know how people
the
don't.
deputy, the deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah, that's the one.
Her
And it's
father was
like,
actually her grandfather was in the SS.
is he the one they brought into Parliament or?
No, it was just that was his friend.
Oh, okay, yeah,
That's probably why he got on there.
yeah.
No, it's
Oh,
crazy.
it's so funny, man, that people don't see through it. But that's also, it brings us back to the stuff I mentioned earlier. Like it's like most people, they're just skirting along with whatever is happening on the television, and then one day, uh, the right people start to say the same things that we do. Like even they can be people like Paul Bier, but they will be forced. Like the Overton window is shifting so fast now. I say that to a lot of the young people I talk to online and stuff like that. Younger people, they like they ask about like how do you identify these gatekeepers, for example, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Now this obvious gatekeeper is talking about stuff that would be reserved for the hardcore 1488 crowd back in the day, or like only 5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's not because they are our guys. It's because the window is shifting and they have to change their stance to stay relevant.
It's strange because
And
like I have noticed like a lot of like before here, if us like people used to say that, oh, that you're racist or whatever, right? Like this is just a smear essentially. Um,
yeah,
and basically I've resorted to saying like Chad yes to a lot of those things, and all that does is confuse them because but then I can articulate like I can articulate like a reason that matches their view because it is just a smear. And what
yeah,
I'll often say is like everybody is right. Everyone's is racist because you prefer your own kids over not your kids or someone else's kids,
yeah,
and like you prefer your grandparents over some strange old people, and essentially what and you keep expanding in concentric circles outwards, and you eventually get to your community. And back in the day, your community was your family. There's your cousins and second
mm,
cousins and third cousins, and then you go out further. Maybe you got fourth cousins up there, and eventually you get to like people in the other town and people in the other province or different country. Um, and the real reason why this why the real reason behind racism is because uh, who else is going to care about your kids? Other people are
mm,
dealing with other people in other places are dealing with their own kids. Like they don't have time to deal with your kids too, and they're not going to. So if you don't have a preference for your kids, then all you're doing is depriving your kids of something that all other human beings have. It's just
mm,
ultimately. So if I ever get to the point where, like, I've gotten to a point where I've been able to explain it this far with people, and usually I can because they're just like so kind of confused. Like, what do you mean racism is good? And then I bring it all back to that, and then suddenly like they're like, oh, that makes sense, and then they're like neutralized
yeah.
for life, which is kind of cool. But usually you can't
It's,
get that far.
it's in-group preference is really what it's about, and that's it's kind of the like the big part of pacifying the Western man is to say to kind of flood us
Thought
with
terminating cliches.
outsiders. Yeah,
Oh yeah, yeah,
but
and
it's also to kind of villainize all the notions of self-preservation in a way
hmm
as a group, and that's like it's. Yeah, I have the same response as you. Like when people call me racist, I just say thanks for noticing. That's exactly the look I was going for. Yeah.
well, it's just
So
such a
even in the
stupid.
workplace, like
It's such a stupid charge. It's like saying, "Oh, you breathe. Hey, you fucking oxygen breather." Oh, okay.
yeah, yeah, just like Hitler.
You
You
drink
drink
water.
oxygen.
You drink water. You fucking Nazi.
Yeah, the best comeback to vegans. Oh yeah, yeah, I know about this. It's a famous vegan called Hitler. You know about him? Yeah, he's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, it is his birthday. Anyways,
Yeah.
what was I gonna get to? Okay, so another next question is what are you working on any projects right now within the sphere, or are you just sort of
Yeah, many actually. So
okay?
this is a good. I'm seeking artists for a game project which is underway. It's called Camp Commander. It's a historical game about. It's kind of in the same style as RimWorld and these games. If you have played those,
Hmm. Yeah.
you're gonna build a camp for a prison camp, and it follows like the historical facts of the narrative, and you have to kind of. I'm not sure if it's going. That's not going to be normal mode, but I'm going to have a hardcore mode, which is historical, and it's going to be impossible, uh, logistically speaking.
Yeah,
If you catch my drift.
the train lines get knocked out and all
Yeah, yeah, and it's like you have to these baking ovens have to go full steam ahead, you know.
that.
But that is one project. I also have various projects. Like I'm looking into sourcing hardware for building some prototypes around communication platforms now built around LoRaWAN. If you've heard about that, it's kind of an IoT standard for communication between devices, but you can also use it to send text messages.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's also possible to make it global. You could use ham radio, data over ham radio as backbone between, for example, Europe and the US or Canada and stuff like that.
That's quite
So
cool.
I'm working. Yes, I think if you can make if you take the stack from the hardware to the firmware and make it completely open and auditable, you will actually be able to create something that all the extremely paranoid people can trust.
That's really cool. That's
If
pretty cool. I was talking to a guy last week about he's doing a magazine, and he wants to sort of maximize QR codes so that you can get
yeah.
like a whole like not whole magazine, but like articles for a magazine onto just a QR code itself, where you won't need like it's not like a link. It's just a pointer. It'll be
Mm,
like the whole well, the article or most of it will be in like one or two QR codes sort of thing. He said he can fit like 700 words in one.
mm,
And when you
yeah,
scan
that
it, it
should
would
be
just
possible.
show up on it would just scan you scan it, it would show up on your app or whatever on your phone.
Yeah, we have actually have a. I can't say too much. It's gonna dox me if I do, but we have a project based around QR codes, and it's kind of it's an on ramp into the platform and into the media that we provide on the platform. So we've actually been doing quite a bit with that, or some projects with that now lately. We won a competition. Like the startup competition thing, and got some funding for it as well. So
Hmm.
that's absolutely something you can do. You can encode probably like I actually don't know the max size, but it sounds about right what he's saying. You can see like the QR codes, they will vary, and like the dot sizes will vary according to the data length and encoded into it. You know, like a URL will have big dots, but then you can find some with smaller ones.
Hmm. It's an interesting way
So
of doing it.
that
It's like, you could almost imagine like in the future like a whole language that's just like hieroglyphics, but it's like QR codes.
yeah. Yeah, it's a brave new world, man. Oh, but I have like as you understand, I have a lot of interest in technology, and one of my big like what I want to do going forward is to provide like infrastructure and stuff like that for people like us, so we can keep up communication channels. You see, like
Hmm.
they are still banning people on X, and it seems like they're going for smaller accounts now and leaving the big ones. But just this morning, I had a Scandinavian friend who contacted me, got the banned for or suspended for nothing.
Hmm.
So it's important to kind of work like it's absolutely paramount that we network and that we not just like locally, but also globally. That's kind of the big strength of what we consider the enemy is that they're very, very intertwined in their group and have a strong in-group preference, a very high cultural coherency,
Mm.
all the things they try to take away from us.
Deep networks,
Yeah, exactly.
and
So that's one of my pet peeves. I've been doing stuff like this for a long time, since before I went all the way. Red Pill wise, I used to have I bought all these cell phone base stations from China and stuff like that.
mm,
So, but I'm going a different route now because that's illegal, so you can't really use those and transmit with them. But the LoRa thing I was mentioning is actually legal to. You can send with that. It's got a range up to I think it's up to 30 kilometers, and then you create a mesh network from that.
mm.
And so you can kind of cover mainland Europe with that stuff, and then to communicate with you guys, we can use ham radio as backbone over. You actually have a very high bandwidth ham. It's basically Wi-Fi, long range Wi-Fi, so you can get up. I can't remember how much exactly, but I want to say that it's close to 100 megabit or something like that.
That would be pretty strong. You could almost game over that.
Yeah, exactly. So you can create these, and they can't really take it out. Okay, they can use jammers and stuff like that, but then it's if we're that far, then we're almost in a kind of a war situation. I would reckon they don't do that until shit hits the fan, I would say.
Well, plus, like,
So
if they're jamming it too, like that's almost at the point where, like, you've essentially won, because then they're fighting back.
yeah, exactly. And it's also, since it's an IoT standard, it's used by, like, it's the IoT standard that is built for, like, say you have an urban network of sensors in, for example, here in my area, they built, for example, sensors into the sewage network to
Mm.
to um, to to find errors and alert on those. So if you start jamming this stuff, then you will also jam all the others, like the used stuff, like the stuff that society is depending on. So I
Yeah.
think that's not going to happen, and that makes it very resilient. They can't really do anything about it.
They'd end up hurting themselves. It'd be like the Samson option in some sense, right?
Yeah,
I
I'm
doubt
I'm waiting for that any day now.
that. Exactly. So what are your thoughts on the future?
I'm kind of optimistic, to be honest. Of course, I live in a country where I would say it's one of the countries that has managed to like it's not that bad here yet. A lot of that, like you have in Oslo, in the capital, it's pretty bad, but Norway is a very homogeneous country still. If you just count the white Europeans, we are last time I checked, that's maybe 3-4 years ago. So that number is probably down now, but it was 95% plus white Europeans here in Norway.
Hmm.
And you're still allowed to homeschool. You have relative freedom. I was actually contacted by the secret police, not or the intelligence agency, not too long ago. I wrote a post about that, and it only ended up boosting my account immensely.
Hmm.
But they just call, and their goal is to kind of scare you into submission. But still, it's like they ask me to come in for a talk, and I say no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Have I done anything illegal? No, you haven't done anything illegal. Why do I have to talk to you then? And it's just like they're not. No one's really afraid of them, because all they can do is call you and send you angry letters. They still have a relatively high degree of protection, judicial protection, and stuff like that here in Norway. Yeah, they will also. It's not like in the States. Now they just released this murderer, the guy who killed that Riley girl, that nursing student.
Oh,
They
they
released
released.
him yesterday or something. Yeah,
Wow.
they say the prison is full, so they had to release him. I think it was an order directly from that Mallorca's guy, if I'm not
That
mistaken.
that's crazy.
And yeah, that
Yeah.
doesn't happen here. Like you had these crazy women driving a car. Like these were Palestinians. I think they drove the car of some anti-immigration people off the road, and they got jailed. Like they no mercy. So even though they will like politically they will discriminate against whites, they're still held to some degree of standards
Yeah, that's good.
still.
That's a blessing, I guess, right?
Yeah. So sorry, it's dinging here. I hope you can't hear the notifications. I'm just going to close Telegram. It's there we
Oh,
go.
no,
Yeah, no,
I don't hear it.
it's good. So it's we're kind of blessed. It's we only have 1,500 of a certain tribe in our country. They don't like the cold, I think.
Hmm.
So and as I mentioned earlier, it's we have a high degree of distrust for Israel. It's very ingrained in people here. Except for like you have the Christian conservatives with the hard on for Israel, of course, like the Zionists and all that. But they are actually are, you could say, an oppressed minority here because they would get so much shit every time they from both sides, you know. So you will
Yeah.
actually see like the left and the right, they will unify against them on Twitter and everywhere. So I think it's not like Sweden. Sweden is in a sorry state. I feel very sorry for my Swedish brothers and sisters, but
Well,
they can always come here. They're always welcome.
when I I might have a way in. My wife was able to get Italian uh citizenship, so
Mm-hmm.
we're thinking of going to the EU because then we can go to Sweden and like live there for because I've always looked at Norway. I'm like it's like with all the stats and stuff, Norway's probably like the one of the best places to go uh, in
Mm-hmm.
in Europe or whatever, at least maybe in the world, the first world, anyways. Um,
Yeah.
because I don't know if you've read, but I wrote a thing about going to South America essentially. Um,
Mm.
but I don't know if that's I mean,
Argentina.
there's some good things about it, but there's also a lot of bad stuff
Yeah.
about it.
It is like if you get to Italy, you can get to Norway. Like we're in the Schengen agreement, it's called. So
Yeah,
people like citizens of Italy can just go to Norway without a passport, and they have instant right to work here and stuff like that. But like I would. It's hard for me to say anything because Canada is one of the countries that is hit really hard, as I see it. But I would feel a bit sad about leaving. You know, it's kind of as I see it here in Norway, it's going to be a fight at some point, and I want to be here for it. You know,
yeah,
for
yeah.
my fellow countrymen.
No, it's interesting. Well, like, the reason I'm on the fence about the emigrating thing to Europe is because like on the one hand, I'd like to go there and help. Um, but on the other hand, am I actually just contributing to the problem in the first
Yeah.
place? So that's why I'm on the
So
fence about it.
yeah, it's such like it's. I'm not sure how it's going to play out. To be honest, here in Norway, I don't think it's ever going to be anything. Like it's never going to be an armed conflict here, for example. I think because there's already such high degree of skepticism towards Israel and towards the whole. Like if I go down on the pub here, I can basically just say exactly what I want about what they stand for. You get some pushback if you start talking about Hitler because they're like idiots, you know. but everything else, oh yeah, T and D, you know. It's that's the countryside, you know, and it's one of the good things about Norway, which I also think has contributed to us faring relatively well now, is that the countryside has been a majority here, and it still is. So the urbanites haven't managed to become a majority and be and take power fully.
Mm. That makes you're able to hold on essentially there.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
but
the reason why we're not in the EU, for example.
well, when I went to so I went to Iceland. I've been there twice, but I went to the first time I went, there was like a Norwegian lady, and she was going from Canada to Norway, but she was hopping, doing like a hop to Iceland first, then going. And
Mm.
we were staying, and she she was like I don't know, she was like sort of in between like a grandma and like a middle aged woman, and she was talking
Mm.
about how at the time there's like a village in Norway where there was like Norway's like she sounded like she was pretty based. Let's just say that. Um,
Yeah.
but she was talking about how like there's this one village she couldn't go in because if she did, there'd be like these what do you call it? Abrahamic fellow religionists at the gate or of the community that would like kind of kick you out or attack you or something like that, and that the police don't do anything about it because they sort of have control over this particular. I don't know. Is that true?
That would have to be certain parts of Oslo, and that's the
Mm,
only place that could be the case. But still, I've been to these places. I'm not afraid to go there. I'm a normally built guy.
yeah.
I live, but not. I'm not a huge guy by any measure. But as a woman, I would not feel safe probably because you have it is what it is, and especially after you had this whole Syrian immigration thing, they just used that as a cover. Like maybe 2% of them or something were Syrians, and the rest are Africans, you know,
Yeah.
and these Malis and stuff like that. So I remember, for example, you had one story like when they just flooded in at some point. It was a very high rate of they came on bikes over the border from Russia. No, from Sweden, I mean, and Russia, actually up in the north, you know,
Wow.
and like you had these stories, for example, about you had this like what's it called, like Five Flags, you know, like this resort where you go to swim,
Oh, the Six Flags.
and Six Flags, that's right, and Five Guys. I was thinking about that, and and this immigrant, he just assaulted a boy, a young boy, a kid, and just raped him in the pool there,
Oh.
and they just play it off like, oh yeah, that's very sad what happened, but he was sexually frustrated and didn't know the Norwegian laws. That's why this happened, you know. So you can't really move amongst if those people hold hold the fort, as it were, in a township. It's I wouldn't go in there as a woman, to put it like that. You also had this crazy story about this kid who was sitting there playing. I think he was playing Team Fortress or something on his PC, and this African just climbed through his window. He didn't notice it because he had the headphones on, and he just assaulted him and raped him in his room there
Wow.
in Norway.
Is that
And
in the south or in Oslo?
I can't remember where it was. This was also in the same time, but I reckon it's probably up in the Oslo area. Like
Mm.
this stuff wouldn't really fly here down south. It's the farmers wouldn't allow it.
So
You
when they
get
bite,
what I mean?
yeah, yeah. So when they biked in, like they came in from the north area, like I don't know,
Yeah,
into Trondheim and stuff, or like were they up further north than that?
I think they biked into Sweden. I think that's the story there, and they came through Sweden to Norway. Most of them. Maybe on bikes. I don't know. But I remember there were stories about these big piles of bikes because you have these strict laws about bikes in Norway, and you can't import the bikes they came on because they didn't have proper brakes or something like that, and didn't have the bell or
Oh,
the
I lost
border that were
I
left
lost
there by these immigrants.
I lost you for a minute there. I got to they didn't have the bell.
It's strict. Everything is very strictly regulated in Norway. So I remember there was these stories on the news about these piles of bikes on the border because they couldn't take them through customs,
Yeah. That's
because they were not according to standard.
wow. The bureaucracy comes in to save the day.
Yeah, yeah. I
You can
saved
get
us from
raped
the
and
bikes.
you can get raped,
They
shoved
let immigrants.
sorry.
Mm.
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
saying they saved us from the bikes, not the immigrants.
yeah. Yeah, you can get
Yeah,
raped. It's too bad, but no bikes, right? But that'd be unsafe. No bell. Come on.
yeah. We should stop something that rhymes with bikes instead. That would be better.
Yeah, unfortunately, no spelling errors, I suppose. Um,
Yeah,
okay, so
yeah,
I'll get to the last question because we've been going for just over an hour now. But uh, if you
yeah.
could, not to rush you out or anything, um, but if you could change one thing about our situation, just like sort of a minor thing, like this, it can't be system wide or it can't be systemic. What would it be?
But I think like the crux of it is obviously democracy, but also with the democracy couldn't be controlled as it is today without the media.
Hmm.
So I guess I would start there. One of the many studies I dropped out of is journalism actually. I never had a thing for school, but
Yeah,
I think that's a huge problem. And if we could kind of get people to realize what the media is up to, I think we would get very far.
well, what one thing that people forget to you've been to journalism school. I haven't been to it, but I know people that did, and they told me that and this is multiple different countries, right? So
Mm.
they told me that each one of them, Canada, Brazil, Sweden, that the biggest buyer of
Mm.
advertising is always the government.
Yeah, exactly. They say in America, that's quite interesting. Actually, I read about the reason why there are ads for Pfizer, for example, on the news channels. Isn't It's not because they need the advertising.
Mm.
It's because it's their way to bribe the media, who is it's kind of on life support now these days, the traditional media. So they save them with money, and then they kind of have them in their hand.
Yeah, they won't release stories that
So,
are negative against their advertisers, right?
yeah, and here in Norway, it's not. I don't think there's that much corruption in the media here. Really, it's just that they don't have agency of their own. Like they will just sit and copy the sources from America that they trust, and that usually boils down to CNN. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
there's no mockingbird situation in Norway. It's just that these midwits in the media they trust these sources who are compromised in America.
and tell you the truth, like a lot of my main problem with the media is that like you could there's just so much stuff going on in the world, right? Like you could kind of you could literally do a story with 8 billion people on anything. You could whatever you could do a random number generator and there's going to be a story about it because just because there's so many different situations and things going on. So
Yeah,
what that means though is media definitionally like is curation. So
yeah,
they're not really telling you the truth. They're just showing you what they want you to see.
yeah. So
and
as
it's
I say, it's instrumental to manipulate people, and like the people who try to take us down are all for like one of the big things they promote is democracy.
yeah,
So you gotta ask yourself why is that? Well, it's because people are easily manipulated emotionally, and that's
mm,
also tying into the whole thing about emasculating the men today, making them more effeminate, both through their views, but also like you can see, and I remember there was this study from America, like they say. The testosterone level and the sperm count of American men has gone down by 70% since the 70s,
mm,
and that will make uh, you a subject that is more easily manipulated through emotions. You
yeah,
just show pictures of like dead people on the side you want them to support, like Ukraine here. Like Ukraine has a lot of support here because they manipulate people through the media. It's like they write these stories about outrageous stories about Russians. We're not like I'm no Putin fan by any means, but it's like some of these stories are just ridiculous. It's like the stories you can read in old propaganda from the war about how the Germans were eating babies, and
yeah, yeah. No, I know some. I've been to Russia. I went there, and like I'm not a Putin fan, but like I've met Russian people, and
Hmm.
and do you know who they were most like out of all the people I met? Because I've been like probably um over a dozen different
Uh,
countries, and I met like uh dozens of different ethnicities, and the people that Russians are most alike are Americans.
yeah,
Like
that's
they're yeah,
I don't haven't met many, but I can imagine.
yeah, they're just like a lot of them are entrepreneurial. Um, they kind of want to be left alone. They think they're the best. you know?
Yeah,
But it's just like Americans, right? So like Canada sort
yeah.
of like Canada used to be a serious country, but if you talk to like say Black Horse or Spears and stuff, that he'll say that we were conquered culturally in the 1960s, which is
Hmm.
I think pretty much true. Um, and because we used to like we used to have the third biggest navy in the world, and I
Hmm.
think one of the biggest land armies. Despite
Hmm.
despite being 1/10 of the United States, and now we have like nothing. You know, we don't even put
Yeah,
2% to NATO.
yeah. It's sad. I think like Trudeau is like the opposite of every Canadian I have met, at least. So it's sad that he is like the face outwards for your country. Like people might judge Canadians based on him, and is just so far from every Canadian I've met ever.
I've never
And
met
I like,
someone who voted for him. I've never met a single. So no one will admit it, anyways.
no, no, I can imagine like the son of Castro, isn't he?
The bastard son
The
of.
foreign agent. Oh, it's always been like I feel like Norwegians and also by extension other Europeans, they've always viewed Canada as a country that is very close to how we are in a way, much closer than the States.
hmm Well, that's true to some degree, yeah. Or at least it used to be.
Yeah,
Now I kind of feel like we're more and more Americanized, and it's almost like we're trying to. It's almost like our elites are like, "Oh, you got a bunch of non-white people, so we got to collect all the Pokemon too." And I think a lot of that. I think a lot of like the millennial. Like when I was a kid, I used to play Pokemon, and it was just like everyone did. But I
yeah,
never, I never thought that that would translate to like voting patterns and people like literally wanting to collect every like you go to these cities like Portland, like Portland, Seattle, and Vancouver are very similar. Like they all have sort of like the
Yeah,
same. They have the same culture, and the reason is because they were the same country at one point. It was Columbia territory, and
yeah.
and that obviously attract more people. And and it's always been very multicultural here because like at one point the biggest ethnic group in Columbia territory was Hawaiians.
Oh yeah,
Because they were brought
like
in.
Maori or
Yeah, like that. Like
oh, it was crazy.
Polynesians from Hawaii. Either they're brought in for labor because like there was you can't hire the natives because they're doing their own thing, right? So if you want to build white people stuff, and there's not enough white people to do it, they brought in these guys, which attracted more Europeans eventually. But
Yeah,
obviously, if you're Hawaiian, you're not going to stay in the West Coast. You're going to go back to Hawaii because it's like awesome there. So it was temporary, and so you get these people in like Vancouver, these bug people that like they're 100% like Germanic or English, and they live in these like towers. They pay like $3,000 a month for like a 1 bedroom or even a studio apartment,
yeah,
and they have no car. They might have a bike that probably got stolen. Um,
yeah.
and and they every
Bike
weekend,
without the teeth.
oh yeah, and every yeah, and every weekend they go to brunch with some of their friends with multicolored hair and different piercings and stuff like that. And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just such a. I've met these people, and it's just such a sort of empty
Yeah,
life. Like they don't have any children. It's kind of sad.
nihilism. Like it's a big part of how they kind of sell us the whole. The both capitalism and communism is centered around materialism in
Hmm.
a philosophical sense. Like it's all about taking away all the things that used to give real meaning in people's lives, like family, community, religion, or spirituality, or whatever, and exchanging it for Netflix, flat screen TVs, maybe a car or a bike, like. And I've
Yeah.
had to deal with these people. There's not many of them here where I live, and in the industry, well, I guess in Oslo there is a lot of them in the tech industry, but not here in the southwest. Here is more the professional hardcore nerds, and the
Hmm.
few we get to apply at our company, I just say no. That's. I told my boss, you have to remember in nature, very bright colors means poison. And he's like, oh yeah, yeah, you're right about that.
Base. That's a good.
So,
That's a
but
good entry point there.
I've had, yeah, it is. It's true as well. But I've had to deal with it. I was leading a bigger open source game project, and I had these like maybe 10, 20 developers at some point underneath me, and I had like lots of them. These were international people from the States and everywhere, and a lot of them were. I remember one of them had this femboy in his profile, stuff like that, and another one was posting these pictures about this programmer socks. It's like basically a tranny, and just dealing with these people was it's a big reason why I quit the project. But like that, it's like I remember the Discord server we had like a wall of text, maybe like you had to scroll 2 pages down just with rules about what you were allowed to say. It's basically just catering to these people. The whole project became centered around catering to these people, and I guess that's and they also feel a void in their life, like the material stuff. It's not gonna do it. So
Yeah.
they do the whole identitarian thing, like we are doing now, but like we do it out of love, for our people, and also because it's constructive. And they do it because, well, it's probably like it's as self-destructive as everything else they do.
Have you ever read the Bhagavad Gita?
Yeah, I have. It's actually on the coffee table underneath, on the shelf underneath the table.
Oh,
It
nice.
is actually. Now I
Yeah,
have it
it's
in my hand.
So if you,
Yeah.
in chapter 16 of it, there's this part where Krishna goes into like this whole speech about I think he calls them in English it's called the demoniacs,
Mm-hmm.
which are basically, and if you read it, it's basically describing materialists, and
Yeah.
it's interesting how how it's framed because it's very true. Um, though here nowadays we would veil it or couch it or we put like a fog around it so you couldn't see what was actually happening. Um,
Mm.
but like but these sort of pleasure seeking materialists, because that's all they have. Um, and
Mm.
the only reason they wouldn't do it is because they would figure it would like prevent them from getting future pleasure in some sense, if even if they have that notion, because a lot of them just are like drug addicts that just basically kill themselves
Yeah.
with drugs. Um, but basically, they seek out pleasure at any cost, and it doesn't matter. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if that costs you, costs them, costs society. It doesn't matter because every moment where they're not seeking pleasure is like existential hell for them.
Yeah.
And and it's like,
They can't be alone with themselves in a room, you know. That's kind of a good measure of like sanity in a way in a man, you know. Can he be alone with himself in a room for an
yeah,
hour without going crazy?
exactly. Yeah. It's really interesting. Anybody listening, I definitely recommend reading the Bhagavad Gita because it is very well, it's not Western, so there you go. Now you can
Mm.
look. Now you can look like you're woke. You can hide that you're based in public by reading this, and
Yeah, yeah,
and also learn a lot of things about humanity that have been true for thousands of years, right? Um,
yeah.
'Cause I'm pretty sure the story is older than its written form, and I think it was what written down in 300 BC or something.
Yeah, it's an old Aryan tale, I reckon, and it's or Vedic, you know, and it's these are old eternal. I think this is a battle that's been waged many times before.
Yeah.
Like these days, who knows what's actually true about their history and not, you know.
Hmm.
And I see. I think we've been in a circle of like it is the battle of good versus evil. There's no doubt about it.
Hmm.
The left stage tend to take that angle as well, but they fight for nihilism to all the emptiness in people's lives today. You know, like you can just see the suicide rates among these people, and everything is just there's no way of like if you put all the facts on the table to say that they are right, you know, in
Hmm.
an objective manner of speaking. And I believe it's an old war that's been going on for since before the first no the last ice age. Now we're getting into tinfoil hat land.
Return to Agartha. Uh, yeah, no, that's interesting. We should probably do another stream on that maybe at some point. Because that is
Yeah.
interesting. Anyways, I don't want to keep you too long because I'm sure you got things to do today, and I have another stream I
Yeah.
got to do at in about 40 minutes for my D&D thing. But yeah, so
Yeah.
anything else? But before we do go, is there anything else you want to mention or bring up?
No, it's I would say to young men out there, you have to tribe up. You have to train. Training is paramount. It raises your testosterone level. It fixes your emotional problems. Be strong. Look forward. We're gonna win.
That's a great message. All right, man. Well,
Thank
thanks
you.
for joining me, and hopefully we'll be able to talk soon again.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun. Yeah, can't wait to hear it online.
Awesome. Well, take care, man.
Yeah, you too.